Why your life sucks as a medieval knight? So you think being a medieval knight is all about honor, glory, and rescuing damsels in distress? Let me guess. You've watched too many Disney movies and think it's all shining armor, noble quests, and epic battles where the good guys always win. Well, congratulations, you've fallen for the biggest marketing scam in human history. Let me tell you what it's really like to be a noble knight in the Middle Ages. Because, spoiler alert, it's about as glamorous as being a garbage collector. Except, the garbage fights back, and you can't go home at the end of the day. It's a glorious training. Welcome to Medieval Boot Camp from Hell. Think knight training is about learning sword techniques and riding majestic horses. Think again, princess. You're about to spend the next 15 years of your life as an unpaid intern in the world's most violent fraternity. Picture this. You're 7 years old. Your parents just shipped you off to some lordess castle because they can't afford to feed you anymore. Welcome to being a page, kid. You're basically a medieval slave with a fancy title. Your daily routine involves scrubbing floors, carrying heavy shit for grown men who treat you like dirt, and learning to serve food without getting backhanded across the face. The smell? Imagine a locker room that hasn't been cleaned in 6 months, mixed with horse manure, unwashed bodies, and the lingering aroma of last week's mutton that's gone bad. You'll be sleeping in a drafty hall with 20 other boys, sharing lice like trading cards, and the only entertainment is watching older kids get beaten for minor infractions. But wait, it gets better. At 14, you graduate to squire. Congratulations. You're now a personal assistant to a man who thinks hygiene is a foreign concept. Your job description includes armor maintenance, horse care, and being a human shield when things get dicey. The relationship between you and your knight is like that between a devoted dog and an abusive owner, except the dog actually gets fed regularly. And here's the kicker. After all this abuse, UL develops Stockholm Syndrome so severe that UL actually missed this. Character building experience when you re-older. It's like fondly remembering your worst college hazing, except instead of beer pong, people were actively trying to kill you. The reality of shining armor. Your personal iron prison. Let's talk about that magnificent suit of armor you see in movies. You know, the one that gleams in the sunlight and makes you look like a medieval superhero? In reality, that armor is your personal torture device, designed by someone who clearly had a vendetta against comfort and basic human movement. First off, that armor weighs about as much as a small refrigerator. Imagine strapping a refrigerator to your body and then trying to fight someone that's basically your Tuesday. The smell inside? It's like a gym bag that's been left in a hot car for 3 months. It's mixed with your own terror, sweat, and the lingering scent of whatever you last ate. And since you can't exactly take it off for bathroom breaks during battle, well, let's just say there's a reason knights walked funny after long campaigns. The sound is equally delightful. Every step you take sounds like a one-man band having a seizure. Forget about stealth. You announce your presence from 3 villages away, and when you fall down, good luck getting back up without looking like a turtle flipped on its back. You'll flail around helplessly while your enemies laugh at you, and your own allies debate whether it's worth the effort to help you up or just leave you there as a distraction. But here's the real joke. That armor doesn't even protect you from the things that actually kill most knights. Disease, infection, and gangrene don't give a damn about your fancy iron suit. You could survive a sword fight only to die 3 days later because a tiny cut got infected. It's like wearing a bulletproof vest made of Swiss cheese. Technically protective, but missing the point entirely. The noble steed. Your 4-legged anxiety attack. Ah, the trusty warhorse. Man's best friend. Loyal companion, and the key to your success in battle. Except medieval warhorses weren't gentle giants from fairy tales. They were essentially furry tanks with anger management issues and a tendency to kick anything that moved.
How your warhorse
is basically a 1,000-pound anxiety disorder with hooves. These animals were bred for one purpose: to be aggressive, territorial, and completely psychotic in combat. They'll bite enemies, trample fallen soldiers, and generally act like 4-legged harbingers of doom. Which sounds great until you realize you have to live with this creature every single day. The smell of the stables, imagine a porta-potty at a music festival mixed with hay that's been soaking in horse piss for weeks. You'll spend hours every day brushing, feeding, and caring for an animal that would happily kick your teeth in if you approach it wrong. And don't even think about developing an emotional bond. These horses were expensive military equipment, not pets. Get too attached, And you'll be heartbroken when your beloved Thunderhoof gets disemboweled by a peasant with a pitchfork. And let's talk about riding these beasts into battle while wearing that refrigerator armor we discussed earlier. You're essentially trying to control a barely tame wild animal while carrying the weight of a small car. All while people are shooting arrows at you. It's like trying to parallel park during an earthquake while blindfolded. Theoretically possible, but probably ending in disaster. The best part? If your horse dies in battle, you're not just losing your transportation, you're losing your entire life savings. A good warhorse costs more than most people made in a decade. So when Thunderhoof takes a spear to the chest, you're not just grieving, you're also financially ruined. The glamorous castle life. Living in a medieval maximum security prison. When you're not out getting your ass kicked in various fields across Europe, you get to enjoy the luxurious lifestyle of castle living. And by luxurious, I mean you'll be living in what is essentially a stone refrigerator with the heating system of a meat locker. Medieval castles were built for defense, not comfort. The walls are a thick stone designed to keep enemies out, which also means they keep heat out and moisture in. Your living quarters? Imagine a college dorm room designed by someone who hates college students, scaled down to the size of a closet with stone walls that weep moisture, and a window that windowed it is basically a hole in the wall with maybe a piece of cloth covering it. Temperature inside stays consistently freezing year-round, with brief interludes of fucking freezing during winter. You'll develop a permanent case of what we'll call castle cough, a lovely combination of dampness, poor ventilation, and breathing in smoke from badly designed fireplaces. The acoustic situation is equally delightful. Every footstep, conversation, and bodily function echoes through the stone corridors like you're living inside a medieval speaker system. Privacy, that's a modern concept, buddy. Be sharing space with dozens of other knights, servants, and various hangars. The Castle-S idea of interior design is functional brutalism. Think prison cell meets medieval torture chamber. Your furniture consists of a wooden chest, a straw mattress that's probably older than you are, and maybe a small table if you're lucky. And let's talk about the social dynamics. Castle life is like being trapped in a really violent episode of The Real Housewives, except instead of wine throwing, people settle disputes with swords. You'll navigate complex political alliances, petty jealousies, and power struggles that would make a corporate office look like a Buddhist monastery. The culinary nightmare. Medieval fine dining at its worst hope. You like your food with a side of food poisoning, because medieval cuisine is about to rock your world. And by rock I mean destroy your digestive system with the force of a catapult. Staple of your diet is whatever the hell they could find that day, prepared by people who think seasoning means adding salt if you're lucky. Most meals consist of bread that's harder than your armor, meat of questionable origin, and vegetables that look like they've already been through someone's digestive system once. The bread, the bread. It's not the artisanal, crusty goodness you're imagining. It's a dense, often moldy brick that requires significant jaw strength to consume. Think of it as edible construction material. You'll use it as a plate, a napkin, and sometimes as a weapon when things get desperate. The taste. Imagine cardboard with hints of despair and wheat that's been stored in a damp basement for 6 months. Meat is reserved for special occasions, and when I say special, I mean we found a dead animal and it hasn't completely rotted yet. The cooking method is basically burn the outside, leave the inside raw, which creates a delightful Russian roulette of food safety. You'll develop an iron stomach out of necessity, because the alternative is starving to death. And let's not forget about beverages. Water is basically liquid death. So you'll be drinking weak beer for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Not because you're an alcoholic, but because it's literally the only safe thing to drink. The alcohol content kills the bacteria that would otherwise kill you, so you'll maintain a light buzz throughout your entire career just to stay alive. The dining experience itself is equally charming. You'll eat with your hands, share cups with strangers, and dine in a hall that smells like a combination of unwashed bodies, cooking smoke, and whatever died in the walls last winter. Bon AP. The politics of pain, navigating medieval corporate culture, Think modern office politics are bad? Welcome to medieval court life, where passive-aggressive behavior is replaced by actual aggression. And the consequence of choosing the wrong side in a dispute isn't getting fired. It's getting literally fired, as in burned at the stake. The feudal system is basically a multi-level marketing scheme designed by psychopaths. You owe service to your lord, who owes service to his lord, who owes service to the king, who owes service to God. It's an endless chain of obligation that ensures everyone is miserable and nobody has any real power. You are essentially a middle manager in a company where the CEO might declare war on the competition at any moment. Your daily existence involves navigating complex webs of loyalty, honor, and political maneuvering that would make a UN diplomat weep. Every conversation is a potential landmine. Every gesture could be interpreted as an insult, and every decision you make could result in either advancement or exile. It's like playing chess, except the pieces are human beings, and losing means actual death. The concept of honor is particularly hilarious. It's essentially a code of conduct designed to make you do stupid things in the name of reputation. Someone insults your horse? Honor demands you challenge them to combat. Someone questions your courage. Time to prove it by doing something incredibly dangerous and pointless. It's like toxic masculinity weaponized into a legal system. And let's talk about the justice system. Trial by combat, anyone. Nothing says fair trial like making two people fight to the death to determine guilt or innocence. It's like settling legal disputes with a game of Russian roulette. Dramatic? Sure. But not exactly what you'd call equitable. The social hierarchy. Welcome to medieval high school. But everyone's armed. The medieval social system is basically high school, except the popular kids can legally execute you if you annoy them. As a knight, you're somewhere in the middle of this food chain. Not quite at the bottom, but nowhere near the top, and constantly reminded of your place by everyone around you. Above you, you've got nobles who inherited their positions through the genetic lottery and seem to believe that blue blood actually makes them superior beings. These are people who've never worked a day in their lives, yet somehow think they're qualified to make life or death decisions for everyone else. They'll treat you like a useful tool at best, or a disposable asset at worst. Below you, you've got the peasants, and boy, do they have some opinions about your lifestyle. They see you as their protector, their oppressor, and their meal ticket all rolled into one. They'll bow and scrape when you're around, then probably curse your name when you're not. It's like being a mall security guard. Everyone expects you to solve their problems, but nobody really respects you. Your fellow knights are your competition, your brothers in arms, and your potential enemies all at the same time. You'll forge bonds deeper than friendship in battle, then compete viciously for the same lands, titles, and women back home. It's like being in a fraternity where everyone's carrying weapons and grudges. The church adds another layer of complexity to this social shit show. Priests who've never held a sword will lecture you about the morality of violence, while simultaneously blessing your weapons before battle. It's like having a pacifist coach for a boxing team. Theoretically possible, but practically absurd. The romance myth. Dating in the Dark Ages? Let's address the elephant in the room. The whole courtly love thing. You've probably heard about knights and their romantic adventures, noble quests for fair maidens, and chivalrous romance. Reality check. Medieval romance is about as romantic as a tax audit. First off, marriage isn't about love, it's about real estate. You're not choosing a partner. You're negotiating a business merger with someone's daughter as the contract. The woman you marry is probably someone you've met once. At a formal ceremony where you both stood awkwardly while your parents discussed dowries and land rights, it's like arranged marriage meets hostile corporate takeover. Courtly love, the supposed romantic ideal of knights, is essentially an elaborate form of emotional torture. You pine for someone you can't have, write terrible poetry about your unrequited feelings, and perform increasingly stupid acts of devotion that mostly just annoy everyone involved. It's like being a medieval stalker with a code of ethics. The actual women in your life fall into a few categories. The noble ladies, who are completely off limits and view you as a trained pet. The servants who are afraid of you, and the occasional camp follower who's probably carrying diseases that won't be curable for another 400 years. Your romantic options are basically impossible, terrified, or potentially lethal. And let's talk about the mechanics of romance while wearing armor. Ever tried to woo someone while dressed like a walking scrap metal sculpture? It's like trying to be seductive while wearing a refrigerator. The armor clanks with every movement. Can't actually touch anyone without potentially injuring them. Forget about any kind of physical intimacy. You need at least 2 servants and a crowbar to get out of that metal suit. The glorious battles. Real combat versus Hollywood fantasy. Here's where we get to the meat of knightly life. The actual fighting. Let me tell you, real medieval combat is nothing like the choreographed dance sequences you see in movies. It's more like a violent riot with pointy objects, where everyone is terrified, exhausted, and trying desperately not to die. First, let's talk about the smell of battle. It's not just blood and mud, it's the aroma of fear-induced bowel movements. Vomit, infected wounds, and rotting flesh all mixed together in a potpourri of human misery. Add in the smoke from burning buildings, the metallic taste of blood in the air, and the general stench of unwashed bodies in close quarters. And you've got an olfactory experience that would make a garbage dump seem pleasant. Sounds are equally delightful. Forget the noble war cries and inspiring speeches. Real battle sounds like a combination of screaming, crying, metal clanging, and the wet sounds of sharp objects meeting soft flesh. You'll hear grown men calling for their mothers, enemies begging for mercy, and the distinctive sound of armor being punctured by arrows. It's like a symphony of suffering with a percussion section of pure terror. Combat itself is nothing like the sword fights in movies. It's not elegant or beautiful, it's desperate, brutal, and usually over in seconds. Most of the time, you're not fighting honorable single combat. You're part of a chaotic melee where anyone could stab you in the back at any moment. Your carefully trained sword techniques become irrelevant when you read being attacked by 3 peasants with farming tools and a really bad attitude. And here's the fun part. Most knights don't die glorious deaths in battle. They die from infected wounds 3 weeks later, or from disease in the camp, or from falling off their horse during a retreat. It's like training your whole life to be a race car driver, only to die in a fender bender in a parking lot. The economics of being a noble warrior? Let's talk money. Because being a knight is basically running a small business where your primary product is violence and the market is incredibly unstable. You're essentially a medieval military contractor, except instead of government contracts, you're dealing with feudal lords who may or may not pay you depending on their mood. Your startup costs are astronomical. Full set of armor costs more than most people will see in their lifetime. A good warhorse is worth more than a small village. Weapons, maintenance, training, servants, it all adds up to a fortune that would make a modern CEO weep. And unlike modern businesses, you can't get insurance for when your equipment gets destroyed in battle. So the income stream is equally unreliable. You might get land from your lord, but that land comes with peasants who may or may not be productive, whether that may or may not cooperate, and neighboring knights who may or may not decide to raid your holdings. It's like being a landlord where all your tenants are illiterate. Your property is constantly under threat, and your maintenance costs include replacing things that got burned down in the last war. And let's talk about the seasonal nature of warfare. Fighting happens mostly in spring and summer, when the weather is decent and crops aren't being harvested. The rest of the year, you're basically unemployed, living off whatever you managed to save from the last campaign. It's like being a seasonal worker, except your off-season activities include not dying from infected wounds and trying to keep your peasants from starving. The retirement plan is particularly grim. There's no pension, number 401k, no social security. Your career ends when you're too old to fight, too injured to continue, or too dead to care. Most knights die poor, having spent their entire fortunes on equipment and lifestyle, leaving their families to figure out how to survive without the primary breadwinner. The psychological toll. Medieval PTSD in armor. Here's something the history books do and talk about much. The mental health consequences of being a professional killer in an age where therapy consists of pray more and drink less. The psychological reality of knightly life is basically a masterclass in how to develop severe trauma while maintaining a facade of honorable nobility. You'll witness things that would make a modern war correspondent need therapy. Entire villages burned to the ground, children killed for being in the wrong place at the wrong time, friends disemboweled by people they trusted. The casual brutality of medieval warfare isn't just physical. It's psychological torture that you expected to process without any support system. Beyond be manly about it. The constant threat of death creates a perpetual state of hypervigilance that would exhaust a Navy SEAL. You'll develop the medieval equivalent of PTSD, except instead of counseling and medication. Your treatment options are alcohol, prayer, and hoping the nightmares eventually stop. Sleep becomes a luxury you can't afford, because relaxing your guard for even a moment could mean waking up with a dagger in your chest. And let's talk about the moral injury of it all. You're supposed to be a noble protector of the innocent, but your job description includes kill people for money and burn down villages on command. The cognitive dissonance between your supposed ideals and your actual actions would break most modern people. You'll spend your entire career trying to reconcile being a good Christian knight with the reality of being a professional murderer. The social isolation is equally devastating. You can't talk to civilians about your experiences because they wouldn't understand. And you can't show weakness to your fellow knights, because that S basically painting a target on your back. You'll develop a 1,000-yard stare that would make a Vietnam veteran nod in recognition, except your war never ends, it just moves to different locations. The religious hypocrisy. God's holy warriors or Satan's lapdogs. The medieval church's relationship with knights is one of the most spectacular examples of institutional hypocrisy in human history. On one hand, you're supposed to be a holy warrior fighting for God and righteousness. On the other hand, your job involves violating pretty much every commandment in the Bible on a regular basis. The Crusades are the perfect example of this religious schizophrenia. The Pope basically said, hey, you know how Jesus said to turn the other cheek and love your enemies? Yeah, forget all that. Go kill some Muslims for God. It's like having a peace activist organize a genocide and call it holy work. You'll receive blessings for your weapons, prayers for victory in battle, and absolution for your sins, all from the same priests who preach about peace, love, and forgiveness. It's like having a drug dealer who moonlights as a DEA agent. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. The Church's moral flexibility is particularly impressive when it comes to the just war doctrine. Any war your lord wants to fight suddenly becomes a holy crusade with God's blessing. Stealing your neighbor's land? That's a righteous quest to reclaim what God intended for you. Slaughtering peasants? They were probably heretics anyway. It's like having a divine rubber stamp for every atrocity you want to commit. And let's talk about the financial relationship between the Church and the military class. The Church owns vast amounts of land, which means they need knights to protect it, which means they need to accommodate the violent reality of knightly life. It's a protection racket dressed up in religious rhetoric. The Church provides moral justification, and the knights provide physical security. The technology gap. Fighting tomorrow's wars with yesterday's tools. Here's one of the most frustrating aspects of knightly life. You're essentially a medieval tank in a world that's rapidly developing anti-tank weapons. The entire knightly system is based on heavy cavalry being the dominant force on the battlefield, but military technology is evolving faster than your ability to adapt. Crossbows are becoming more common, and they don't give a damn about your years of training or your noble bloodline. A peasant with a crossbow can kill you from a distance without breaking a sweat. There's nothing honorable or chivalrous about taking a bolt to the face. It's like bringing a sword to a gunfight, except the guns are getting better every year. The rise of professional armies is making your entire social class obsolete. Why deal with temperamental knights who demand land and titles when you can hire mercenaries who work for cash and don't have delusions of grandeur? It's like being a skilled craftsman, watching your profession get automated, technically impressive, but economically irrelevant. Gunpowder is on the horizon, and when it arrives, it's going to make your expensive armor about as useful as a chocolate teapot. All that training, all that investment, all that social status, it's all going to be wiped out by peasants with primitive firearms. It's like spending your career mastering the art of horse-drawn carriage racing, only to be replaced by the automobile. Castle design is evolving to counter new siege technologies, but your role in defending these fortifications is becoming increasingly marginalized. You're not a technical specialist. You're a general-purpose warrior in an age that's demanding specialization. It's like being a jack of all trades, in a world that wants experts. The endgame, death, taxes, and the futility of honor. Let's talk about how your glorious career is likely to end. Because, spoiler alert, it's probably not going to be the heroic death in battle that you've been dreaming about. Most knights die in utterly undignified ways that would make their ancestors weep. Disease is your most likely killer. It's not some exotic plague or battle wound, but basic infections that would be treated with antibiotics in any modern emergency room. That small cut from your last skirmish, it's going to fester, turn green and slowly kill you over the course of several agonizing weeks. You'll die in bed, delirious with fever, calling for your mother. Not exactly the stuff of epic poetry.
Ali.
Your body will break down from decades of wearing heavy armor, getting hit with blunt objects, and generally treating your skeleton like a crash test dummy. You'll develop arthritis in joints you didn't know existed. Chronic pain that makes every movement agony, and a collection of old wounds that ache whenever it rains. It's like being a retired NFL player, except the medical care consists of drink more wine and pray harder. Financial ruin is another popular ending. All that expensive equipment, all those costly campaigns, all the investment in your military career, it adds up to a fortune that most knights couldn't sustain. You'll end up selling your armor piece by piece, pawning your weapons, and begging your lord for a pension that probably doesn't exist. It's like being a lottery winner who spent all their money on lottery tickets. And here's the ultimate irony. Even if you manage to survive long enough to retire, you will spend your final years telling stories about the good old days when men were men and warfare was honorable. You'll romanticize the very experiences that nearly killed you. Edit out the worst parts and convince yourself that your suffering had meaning. It's like fondly remembering your worst job, because at least it gave you something to complain about. The legacy lie. How history remembers you versus how you actually lived. The final insult to your knightly career is how history will remember you, or more accurately, how it won't. The romantic image of knights that survives in popular culture is essentially a marketing campaign run by people who never had to live through the reality. Medieval chroniclers were basically the PR department for the feudal system. They wrote about noble quests and honorable battles because that's what their employers wanted to hear, not because that's what actually happened. It's like having your biography written by your company's marketing team, technically accurate, but missing all the interesting parts. The code of chivalry that supposedly governed knightly behavior was largely invented centuries later by people who wanted to romanticize a brutal period of history. Real knights were about as chivalrous as modern mercenaries. They had a job to do, and they did it with whatever methods were most effective. The honor, courtesy, and noble behavior, that was mostly fiction created by people who had never been in a real battle. Literature and poetry turned knights into romantic heroes because that's what audiences wanted to read about. Nobody wants to hear about the knight who died from dysentery or spent his entire career extorting peasants for protection money. It's like how war movies focus on the heroic moments and skip the parts where people are bored, scared, or dealing with logistical problems. Modern media has continued this tradition of sanitizing medieval warfare. Video games, movies, and books present a version of knightly life that's so far removed from reality that it might as well be fantasy. It's like learning about police work from action movies, entertaining, but completely useless for understanding what the job actually involves. So there you have it, the unvarnished truth about life as a medieval knight. It's not noble quests and heroic battles. It's a career in professional violence with a dress code that weighs 60 pounds and a retirement plan that involves dying painfully from preventable diseases. Yet somehow, despite all this, you'll find yourself missing it. After years of complaining about the armor, the politics, the smell, the violence, and the general misery of medieval warfare, you'll develop a perverse nostalgia for the whole experience. You'll remember the camaraderie of shared suffering, the adrenaline rush of combat, and the simple clarity of a life where your biggest decisions involved which end of the sword to hold. It's the ultimate Stockholm Syndrome. ULL become emotionally attached to the very system that is systematically destroying your body, mind, and soul. ULL tells stories about the good old days when men were men and warfare was honorable, conveniently forgetting that those same good old days nearly killed you on multiple occasions. And that's the real tragedy of knightly life. Not that it's brutal, unfair, and ultimately pointless, but that it's so effective at making you believe that the brutality had meaning, the unfairness was necessary, and the pointlessness was actually noble purpose. May your armor always rust at the worst possible moment. May your horse always throw you in front of witnesses. And may you never have to explain to your mother why you chose a career that involves getting hit with sharp objects for a living. But somehow, inexplicably, you'll miss every goddamn minute of it.